Microeconomics, Module 4. The short run and the long run. In economics, the short and long run are not determined by a measure of time, but conceptual time periods, the primary difference being the flexibility and options decision-makers have in a given scenario. The short run is a period of time in which the quantity of at least one input is fixed and the quantities of the other inputs can be varied. The long run is a period of time in which the quantities of all inputs can be varied. When manufacturing baseball bats, you will need raw materials, labor, machinery, and a factory. If demand goes up, you can buy more lumber, add an extra shift, but the machinery is a fixed variable, at least in the short run. Yes, a new factory can be built, but this will take time. The short run is the period in which a company can increase production by adding more raw materials and more labor, but not another factory. Conversely, the long run is the period in which all inputs are variable, including factory space, meaning that there are no fixed factors or constraints preventing an increase in production output. A firm's short-run product curves. To calculate the short-run production cost curve, we must know all the values involved to determine the per-unit cost of production. Fixed costs are the costs that remain the same regardless of output. Variable costs change with each unit of output. The total cost, TC, is the combination of fixed cost and variable cost. The marginal cost, MC, is determined when we identify the change in total cost when producing each additional unit. The relationship between factors of production and the output of a firm is called a production function. Example: Acme Clothing's total product curve shows the number of jackets Acme can obtain with varying amounts of labor, in this case, tailors, and its given level of capital. A total product curve shows the quantities of output that can be obtained from different amounts of a variable factor of production, assuming other factors of production are fixed. The slope of a total product curve for any variable factor is a measure of the change in output associated with a change in the amount of the variable factor, with the quantities of all other factors held constant. The amount by which output rises with an additional unit of a variable factor is the marginal product of the variable factor. How a firm makes its output decisions. In perfectly competitive markets, the following factors impact output decisions. As a perfectly competitive firm produces a greater quantity of output, its total revenue steadily increases at a constant rate, determined by the given market price. Profits will be highest, or losses will be smallest, for a perfectly competitive firm at the quantity of output where total revenues exceed total cost by the greatest amount, or where total revenue falls short of total costs by the smallest amount. A perfectly competitive firm is concerned primarily with the decision of what quantity to produce. To illustrate this, we look at the firm's primary motivation, which is profit. Profit equals total revenue minus the total cost. Profit equals the price times the quantity produced, minus the average cost times the quantity produced. Since a perfectly competitive firm must accept the price for its output as determined by the product's market demand and supply, it cannot choose the price it charges. In other words, the price is already determined in the profit equation, so the perfectly competitive firm can sell any number of units at exactly the same price. How price and output are determined in perfect competition. The available supply will determine the price based on demand. If demand is high and the supply is low, the price will rise. When there is more supply than demand, the price will fall. In perfect competition, price and output are determined by the interaction of demand and supply in the market. These forces decide the price of the industry. The firms will follow the prices decided by the forces of demand and supply. Output is the amount of goods produced by the producers. It is determined by the amount of goods and services that buyers are willing and able to purchase at a given price. If the minimum efficient scale of a firm is small relative to the demand for the good, then many small firms can compete in the market. In perfect competition, there are many firms that sell identical products. Why firms enter and leave a market. The main reason firms enter the market is to create profit. When firms can satisfy a need or desire for the consumer at a cost of production less than the market price, they make a profit. If a business is making a profit in the short run, it has an incentive to expand existing factories or to build new ones. New firms may start production as well. When new firms enter the industry in response to increased industry profits, it's called entry. Firms that incur losses in the short run may try to continue, but in the long run will cease to exist. Profits are the measurement that determines whether a business stays operating or not. Individuals start business with the purpose of making profits. They invest their money, time, effort, and many other resources to produce and sell something that they hope will give them a return. Unfortunately, not all businesses are successful, and many new startups soon realize that their business adventure must eventually end. Effects of technological change in a competitive market. Senior leadership of a firm must be technologically oriented to support, maintain, and explore technology that will enhance performance. Companies like 3M have a 15% rule. They allow their engineers to spend 15% of their time working on pet projects. This has resulted in many innovations and greater profits. Wet sandpaper, Post-it notes, and others are just some examples. Technical talent, reward systems, and company culture empower employees to innovate. Companies that exploit technology will have three conditions in common. Top management orientation. A majority of the top managers responsible for running the company or business have technical education and work experience in their companies. They are comfortable with and fluent in technical topics. Project selection criteria. Managers allocate funds among projects that will support and maintain their technological leadership in specified areas. Systems and structure. The decision-making systems and structure of the company reinforce the priority given to technological matters in two ways. A. The company's system provides a close connection between business and technological decision-making. B. The systems and structure for decision-making on technological matters are consistent with the company's other systems. Technology affects business plans for decisions like project selection, reducing costs, developing new products, developing improved products, reducing the energy content of products, or creating process improvements to reduce dependence on scarce raw materials. A product at the beginning of a life cycle is likely to require performance improvement projects, whereas mature product is more likely to need process improvement and cost reduction projects to support it. Technology and perfect competition. Companies seek technology to gain a competitive edge. It may be to lower the cost of production so that they can lower their price and gain market share. It may also increase the quantity of units produced to increase supply to meet demand. There are some issues with perfect competition. With perfect knowledge, there is no incentive to develop new technology because it would be shared with other companies. If there are externalities in production or consumption, there is likely to be market failure without government intervention. Undifferentiated products are boring, giving little choice to consumers. Differentiated products are very important in industries such as clothing and cars. Technology can keep a company relevant or put them out of business. The advent of the smart screen ushered in the end of push-button phones like BlackBerry and Nokia. How monopoly arises. When a single company has all or most of the market share, it is considered a monopoly. In the 1990s, AT&T was considered a monopoly. Companies like MCI and GTE pushed for government intervention. This led to the breakup of AT&T into sub-companies such as Bell Labs. How and why do companies become monopolies? A monopoly is a company that exists in a market with little to no competition and can therefore set its own terms and prices when facing consumers, making them highly profitable. While monopolies are both frowned upon as well as legally suspect, there are several routes that a company can take to monopolize its industry or sector. Using intellectual property rights, buying up the competition, or hoarding a scarce resource, among others, are ways to monopolize the market. The easiest way to become a monopoly is by the government granting a company exclusive right to provide goods or services. Government-created monopolies are intended to result in economies of scale that benefit consumers by keeping costs down. If the government grants exclusive rights to a firm, It aids in the creation of a monopoly. The British East India Company, to which the British government granted exclusive rights to import goods to Britain from India in 1600, may be one of the best-known monopolies created in this manner. At the height of its power, the firm served as the virtual ruler of India with a power to levy taxes and direct armed forces. Nationalization is another way to create a monopoly. When the government takes over an industry such as oil production in Venezuela, they become the sole producer of oil. Copyrights and patents are another way in which assistance from the government can be used to create a monopoly or a near monopoly, because the government has laws in place to protect intellectual property. Access to a scarce resource can also create a monopoly. Mergers and acquisitions are another way to create a monopoly or a near monopoly even in the absence of a scarce resource. In such cases, economies of scale create economic efficiencies that allow companies to drive down prices to a point where competitors simply cannot survive. How a single price monopoly determines its output and price. Monopolies still rely on the demand curve to determine price. When demand increases, they increase their output by reducing the price. Monopolists seek to earn the highest possible profit. The highest profit will occur at the quantity where total revenue is the highest they can set above the total cost. A monopolist can determine its profit-maximizing price and quantity by analyzing the marginal revenue and marginal cost of producing an extra unit. If the marginal revenue exceeds the marginal cost, then the firm should produce the extra unit. To calculate this, a monopolist selects the profit-maximizing quantity to produce, determines what price the consumer is willing to pay, the total revenue, total cost, and profit. A cost that has already been made and cannot be recovered is called a sunk cost. Compare the performance and efficiency of single-price monopoly and competition. Monopolies are polar opposites of pure competition. A monopoly consists of one firm that produces a unique product or service with no close substitutes. Entry into the market is blocked, which gives the firm market power, i.e., the power to raise price above marginal cost. When a monopoly is generating great profits, it will encourage new entrants into the market. This will drive the political pressure to remove barriers to entry so as to create competition. When new entrants enter the market, the monopoly can no longer set the price. The price is set by the market and the consumer benefits. Comparing pure competition to that of a monopoly, we see that a single-price monopolist will produce less than the purely competitive market and charge a higher price. Pure competition will produce a quantity that is based on demand at a price above the marginal cost. This is more efficient as it supplies what is demanded at a lower cost than a monopoly. Monopolies and firms that collude to act like monopolies reduce competition and create inefficiencies in the market. We have seen that single-price monopolists are neither allocatively efficient, price equals margin cost at the last unit produced, nor productively efficient, producing at the lowest average cost. Consequently, the United States government has passed certain laws that restrict monopolies. Explain how price discrimination increases profit. Selling products at different prices to different customers is price discrimination. There are different price discrimination strategies that can benefit a company. First-degree discrimination involves charging different prices for every product sold. Second-degree discrimination is the process of selling products based on quantity discounts. Third-degree pricing discrimination happens when different prices are charged to different consumer groups for the same good. Price discrimination is rarely possible unless certain market conditions are met. Different market segments, such as retail users and institutional users, must exist. Market segments must be kept separate by factors such as time, distance, or how they use the product. Different segments must be motivated by different prices. There must be no C page between two markets, which means that a buyer cannot purchase on one market at one price and sell in another at a higher price. The firm must not be subject to price competition and have some monopoly power. First-degree discrimination is demonstrated when a ticket scalper sells a market price ticket for different amounts to different people based on what they are willing to pay. Second-degree price discrimination is demonstrated by outlets that offer bulk discounts. Third-degree price discrimination is demonstrated by senior discounts. The products being sold are the same, but specific consumers are charged different prices, and the goal is to generate revenues from a demographic that might otherwise not purchase the product. What are the advantages and disadvantages of monopolies? Monopolies set higher prices than a competitive market, leading to lower consumer surplus. However, monopolies can benefit from economies of scale, leading to lower average cost, which can, in theory, be passed on to consumers. Here are some advantages and disadvantages of monopolies. Disadvantages of monopolies: higher prices than in competitive markets. Monopolies face inelastic demand and so can increase prices, giving consumers no alternative. For example, in the 1980s, Microsoft had a monopoly on PC software and charged a high price for Microsoft Office. A decline in consumer surplus. Consumers pay higher prices and fewer consumers can afford to buy. This also leads to allocative inefficiency because the price is greater than marginal cost. Monopolies have fewer incentives to be efficient. With no competition, a monopoly can make profit without much effort. Therefore, it can encourage inefficiency. Possible diseconomies of scale. A big firm may become inefficient because it is harder to coordinate and communicate in a big firm. Monopolies often have monopsony power in paying a lower price to suppliers. For example, farmers have complained about the monopsony power of large supermarkets, which means they receive a very low price for products. A monopoly may also have the power to pay lower wages to its workers. Monopolies can gain political power and the ability to shape society in an undemocratic and unaccountable way, especially with big IT giants who have such an influence on society and people's choices. There is growing concern over the influence of Facebook, Google, and Twitter because they influence the diffusion of information in society. Advantages of monopolies. Economies of scale. In an industry with high fixed costs, a single firm can gain lower long-run average costs through exploiting economies of scale. This is particularly important for firms operating in a natural monopoly. For example, it would make no sense to have many small companies providing tap water because these small firms would be duplicating investment and infrastructure. The large-scale infrastructure makes it more efficient to just have one firm. Innovation. Without patents and monopoly power, drug companies would be unwilling to invest so much in drug research. The monopoly power of patent provides an incentive for firms to develop new technology and knowledge that can benefit society. Also, monopolies make supernormal profit, and this supernormal profit can be used to fund investment, which leads to improved technology. Firms with monopoly power may be the most efficient and dynamic. Firms may gain monopoly power by being better than their rivals. For example, Google has monopoly power on search engines, but can we say Google is an inefficient firm who doesn't seek to innovate?